Hello! The prodigal podcaster returns. Welcome back to the Sniff Session with the niche sampler, the internet's most laid-back perfume podcast. We interrupt this program to bring you what is hopefully more concise thoughts on the topics I wanted to yap about in this Sniff Session. And it's like when you have an argument with somebody and then you move away from it and you think about everything you should have said. This is kind of one of those moments for me, and apparently I thought it was so important that I film a second little piece to add to the content. So excuse the change in lighting, change in mood, etc. So on consumption, my main message was that people need to develop a sense of self, and then the purchases that they make need to be aligned with that self. I also believe that one needs to project into the future, because I've noted a level of consistency in what the self is. Of course, we are people that evolve and grow, but there are certain elements to oneself that are core features. And I think beyond perfume, consuming in this way, in a more mindful way, is ultimately more sustainable and allows people to make better purchases. And I think that a lot of us exist in generations where we've seen the merits of this, where we get to inherit things from our grandmothers and our mothers. It's because they had items that were good quality, well aligned. They had less fast fashion available to them, so they just had to make good decisions or just make good clothes, and they have stood the test of time, and now we can reap the benefits thereof. I also said that underconsumption being a trend is hilarious, but ultimately good. On one hand, there are multiple wars going on, and what essentially seemed like a recession of some sort, cost of living crisis everywhere. And also given the fact that Elon Musk has been given the keys to the kingdom of the United States, it's best that we're more frugal. But the fact that it has to become a trend for people to become more sustainably aligned, I think it's interesting. On branding, now I think I did go off on a tangent about one particular brand, but I think that branding needs to make sense, and part of having branding that makes sense is having marketing teams, especially if you want to appeal to a wider audience and a more international audience, diverse marketing teams, and a culture that allows that diversity to flourish so that people can clock things before they become an issue. I also think it is safer if you have a brand named after yourself to not make the brand about you, because you are a human, therefore you are fallible, and also you're probably not relatable for a lot of people. So if people's only incentive to purchase from your brand is the fact that you are the brand, it's not a very good jumping off point. So ultimately, as a brand, you need to find ways to relate to your consumer, but keep it professional. And I mean, part of that is how one as a brand can deal with the phenomena that is social media, which is why I think content creators are a good medium, because we are the nexus between brands and audiences. It also is funny because we also get blamed for everything that's wrong in the industry. It's the influencers accepting PR, it's the influencers talking about dupes, it's the influencers hyping up mediocre fragrances, it's the influencers, we're blamed for everything. It's okay. Not because I know, at least in the fragrance space, most of us are not paid for most content that we make, so it's like whatever. Finally, I wanted to say, on about professionalism, one more thing, especially for artisanal brands, and also anybody who wants to play around with fragrance materials. Something that gives me so much anxiety as a scientist is seeing people not working with adequate PPE, personal protective equipment. If you are handling chemicals, whether they're naturally derived and concentrated or they are synthetic, you need to be wearing gloves, you need to be wearing goggles, you need to be wearing a lab coat preferably. The lab coat thing is like less important, because as long as your arms and shirt are covered, you'll be fine. But there's a reason why people who work in labs wear what they wear. And I don't think people appreciate the fact that perfume making is a chemistry. And I've just seen way too many people being very casual about the way that they're making fragrances. And I think that maybe let's not show people how you're making fragrances. And maybe let's leave that to be a mysterious thing that happens in the background if you're not going to do it in a good way, using good manufacturing practices. I understand that at different scales, we've got different levels of access to certain safety setups, but it really gives me so much anxiety, and it makes me less prone to, and makes me less desire to champion your brand if I can tell you're not doing things properly. Because why would I tell people to spend $150 at somebody who is mixing up fragrance while eating in their kitchen compared to somebody who's doing it in a lab wearing PPE, no food inside, no food allowed, so you know that whatever gets into your final formulation is clean, at least. But that's just like the microbiologist, slight germaphobe in me. Finally, what I want to see, my hopes for the new year, more intentional brands. Brands are a dime a dozen today. Saint Celia posted a slide reel on Instagram, retailer in the UK. They were talking about the scale of fragrance production, and they estimated at over 12,500 fragrances released this year alone, and that is alarming. So if you are a brand that is wanting to start in the new year or is going to launch, I hope that you're launching something that the market needs, or something where there is a gap in the market. I talk about this later on, about how the funding is drying up because there are already so many brands that are good investments. If you can't come to a body of investors and show that you are profitable and you have demand, it's likely that you won't survive very long. But I think it's also good that brands die. That's a little bit of a cynical thing to say, but I think nothing can exist in perpetuity. Not everybody's going to be a Guerlain or a Penhaligon's, you know. And also maybe some brands need to stay dead. All of these revival brands also give me pause, but that's another story for another day. So yes, I said, if your stuff isn't interesting or your storytelling sucks, you better have the budget to stay relevant, because that's honestly the truth. And the obvious thing is, if a brand is coming out, they need to also have that one bold scent or that one bold product that keeps people intrigued. Like, not everybody needs to make an ethyl maltol bomb like Baccarat Rouge, but there should be something that stands out. I think we have some more popular brands that have that for them. For instance, Matière Première, for a while it was their Parisian musk, but now I think people love Crystal Saffron a lot more. MFK's Baccarat, Le Labo Santal 33. I think there's usually something that a lot of people really love. Amouage now has Guidance, even though Amouage had been in people's books. So that is the name of the game and the end of the interlude. Onwards with the program. Now, because it's been a while, I've had a lot on my mind, so I will tell you the relative timestamp around which I start talking about perfume. But I've got some thoughts to get off my chest, and I'd love to go back and forth, hear your opinions. And obviously it's the end of year, we do a lot of reflecting about what we've experienced, what worked well, what didn't work well, and what we anticipate for the future in the new year. And I, in the perfume space, have been thinking about two things. On one hand, about consumption, and on the other hand, about branding. And I just think that the fragrance space is becoming so saturated. I wouldn't say oversaturated, because it's a big world. That the way to come out as a successful brand, depending on what that looks like to you, requires really solid branding. And there are different formats of brands these days. So on one hand, you have brands that are born out of some particular context. You may or may not know the person behind it, and then you really just have to interact as an audience with the product and the storytelling behind the releases. On the other hand, you also have brands that are named after the founder or the perfumer, and so that brings back a more personal element into the brand itself, because you've named yourself, your brand, after yourself. So now we need to care a little bit more about who you are and what that represents, and whether or not we want to buy into that. So on one hand, I think it's safer to have founder detached branding. On the other hand, it's also great if you're somebody that people want to invest in, to actually, go into that. But you also can find a good balance. For instance, I think Maison Crivelli is a good balance, where all of the fragrances are based around the travels and stories and experiences of the founder Thibaut. But if somebody said Maison Crivelli and you aren't really into the fragrance space, you wouldn't really know who Thibaut Crivelli is, and you can just interact with the product and not really care much about the founder and the founder story. But if you have a fragrance that is more explicitly named after the founder, then you really, now it's like, okay, but who is this person? Why should I care about their fragrances? What do they stand for? Why are they making perfume? Why is their creative direction or perfume making relevant, etc., etc. And the reason why I bring this up is because the other day, an Italian brand called Nuit, was part of their Christmas calendar campaign, posted a picture of an elf on the shelf. But the elf on the shelf was Snoop Dogg smoking a joint. And I take no issue with that. Hold on. But the text itself said, Bob the Jamaican something something something. And then I was reading this caption about Bob the Jamaican bringing Christmas cheer from this Italian brand called Nuit, that all I know has square bottles and names their fragrances after the ingredients within. I'm like, what's actually going on here? What does any of this, what does Snoop Dogg smoking a joint that you've renamed as Bob the Jamaican have to do with an Italian perfume brand that makes fragrances named after fragrance notes and doesn't even make their fragrances, or is not using Italian perfumers to make their perfume? What does that have to do? What's going on? So I think to be competitive in the market space now, and I think I'm going to be more critical about brands moving forward, because I think I had a really romantic notion of the industry, but the more I understand it, the more I see some behind the scenes and interact with people, the more that I notice there's actually a lot of nonsense out here. And I'm more willing to give grace to a smaller founder who has good product than I am to some arbitrary, faceless, nameless entity that just popped up out of nowhere. Maybe they're only really relevant because they give out the right amount of PR or work with boutiques that give out PR, and then we're supposed to care. Because I think they have like a caramello vanilla that I wanted to maybe include in my vanilla showdown, but I couldn't find a discovery set. And honestly, I had smelled it in store, and while it was nice, it was a nice vanilla, it wasn't really groundbreaking. It was one of those vanillas you could find in a body spray for $10 at your grocery store. And I'm not trying to be mean about the brand because I was upset or I thought it was racist, but I just was very confused because Snoop Dogg is literally one of the most famous rappers alive and in history, and really set the foundation for modern rap today. And I mean, if you don't understand rap history and you don't even if you don't like rap music, I think that's fine. But I think a lot of people don't understand rap history and what it was born out of, and the musical genius that it is. The musical genius behind hip hop production is a completely different thing. Which is why I think Kanye West will always be famous, even though he's a very weird guy. He's a genius producer. And like it's such a rich cultural thing that exists. So then I'm thinking, what does this have to do with Christmas, and what does this have to do with new notes? That was the question. So now you really need your campaigns and your brands, I think, if you want to have a space in the market. Unless you're going to release the next Bianca Latte Baccarat Rouge, you need to come out with something meaningful, because people need to connect to something. And I think as like content creators, especially those who are inundated with a lot of product, especially because this part of the beauty space really doesn't pay much, we are going to be a bit more critical, because there's so much stuff coming in, and there's so much bad stuff coming in as well, that it's just, you need to come with a proper creative direction. Okay, fine. You are an Italian brand. What does that mean? How are you incorporating your national identity into your product? Why should the customer care about having a musk from your brand? Why is it important that you are creating perfume on the market? These are the kinds of questions that I think brands need to be able to answer. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that you'd have to put into your pitch deck in a funding round, right? I mean, I'm not into entrepreneurship, but I know a thing or two about what you need to put into pitch decks. You need to like really show your value add. And I think that because the perfume space was really booming in COVID, a lot of brands got away with really like weak storytelling and weak branding. And I think moving forward, if you want to stay relevant, you need to come stronger. And there's only so much you can gain an audience from PR campaigns. I mean, I know that they came out with a Mandarin Akigala wood fragrance. Akigala wood is a captive from Givaudan, and somebody who does not know the fragrance world will not know what Akigala wood is. So it's very confusing. Well, not confusing to me, but I think it would have been a better move to have a more relatable way to name a fragrance, so that somebody who's not on social media, who happens upon your brand in a store, looks at the selection of what you have and is maybe intrigued enough to try it. Maybe people will think, oh, I know what a Mandarin is, but people are not going to know what Akigala wood is. Let's be honest. Let's be a bit sharper. So hopefully we just get more intentional, more strategic, smarter storytelling. And I don't want to lean into my misandry at some point, but a lot of people in the world live lives where they kind of coast into success, just because of the way their life is set up. Maybe they just know the right people, and sometimes you can tell, because sometimes the way that the brand is set forth is really lazy. And I mean, if I look like in contrast to a brand like Frassaï, and they talk about a sensorial experience, and you look at their social media, they're in different places in the world. They are capturing moments in life in places where you're appreciating this moment in time. Their fragrances are a beautiful examination of different notes from Argentinian flora, and they are coming out with things that aren't seeking to be the next viral thing, but maybe will be something that captures you because it captures a moment in time that you want to experience, or that transports you somewhere. And I think like I want to see more intentionally led creative direction in the future, as opposed to like some of this really shoddy stuff. And on top of that, it's obviously leads you into thinking about the general theme and trends in consumption these days. And of course, a lot of people think about sustainability and overconsumption. And my latest hot take, that was a meditation in my journal, was that collecting, the act of collecting in itself, is also overconsumption. And that is a very neutral statement to say, but it will evoke feelings out of people if you identify yourself as a collector. And listen, we're all in the same boat. But I think once I identified that, that made me think more about what conscious consumption can look like. And I think that one of it is part of being conscious in the way that you live your life requires being honest and really evaluating why you do the things that you do in your life. And I hope that the trend of the influencer dies down, because I think people, again, I said this before, people need to be encouraged to explore and use our connections with other people who see and do and find things as inspiration and for curiosity, as opposed to instruction, as an instruction manual. Because I often think about the way trends operate, and it also makes me feel sad about our development as people as we age, because in my eyes, following trends and getting the latest cool in thing was something that was really important when I was a teenager and in high school, because it allowed you to be part of a group or part of a moment in time. And in a way, culturally speaking, these are hallmarks of specific eras and epochs. Like if somebody brings out an owl necklace or a mustache necklace, you are immediately transported to the 2010s, because that was something everybody was really into at that time. But I don't think a lot of people still have their owl necklaces and their mustaches. But I think it's okay, because we were teenagers then. But now as adults, I think that you should be old enough to know what works for you and what doesn't, and what you like and what you don't like. And of course, there's always room for evolution, but you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Collection is overconsumption, and that's okay. But you now need to evaluate whether it's important for you to continue to indulge in that practice, or if it's more important for you to be more sustainable. That's the only statement I'll say about that. And I know that sustainability is not important to most people. Sometimes I think about, because obviously I engage with the internet a lot, and I see people so casual about certain things, and I realize that we are not thinking in the same way. Like I saw somebody saying, oh, I love my red Coca-Cola fridge. I'm like, wow. So we were not boycotting Coca-Cola, and it's not necessarily just because of their factories in Israel. It's the fact that Coca-Cola is this huge conglomerate that has devastated communities all around the world. I think there was a study done about how there's a certain region in Mexico that has a huge rate of obesity, where most of the time they are drinking Coca-Cola rather than water, because the Coca-Cola factories in the region apparently poison some of the water supply, so it's safer for them to drink the Coca-Cola rather than the water. And do we really need these giant conglomerates to be our part of our household experience, part of our life story? I think that one of my aims in life, my goals in life, is to have a life where most things I appreciate are unbranded. I would love to just have a quality notebook. Of course, everything comes from somewhere, so we need branding as part of the business model. But I don't want somebody to look at my bag and say, oh, that's a Coach or a blah, blah, blah. I just want to have things that align with my taste and represent who I want to be. And so I think that I need to consume and I need to act in a way that aligns with that. And that's hard. It's really easy to spout ideologies. It's really easy to interrogate and to critique, but it's hard to put things into practice. So that's what I've been thinking about. So in the new year, I think I'm going to be a lot more critical about what I say yes to. I'm really excited for people to get into the fragrance making space, but I hope people are coming in for the right reason. But also I am excited for more creator-led creative direction, which is going to be part of our segue into the scents I've been wearing lately. But because we smell so much, so we understand where redundancies lie. But then for some people, I think that they don't really care about not being redundant, and they just want to make the perfect iteration of a certain profile, which I suppose is okay. But I also think there are so many gaps in terms of proper execution for certain profiles and scent stories, that there's so much we could really take advantage of in the creation process. And I mean, I think I'd love to be a creative director for a fragrance brand. I don't know if that is even a possibility at the kind of salary I'm looking for, but I think that would be so fun to do. But because I don't really enjoy business operations, so I would never really start my own brand. But creative direction would be fantastic, because I kind of think I understand the landscape. So a lot of things to me could be quite referential, and then it's all about bringing things back to novelty and really bringing value to the market, because there's going to be a lot of competition in the new year. Designer brands are competing, then obviously there are founder-led brands that need to compete in the space. There's going to be a lot more competition for funding, and it's already tough to get funding for fragrance, which is why like initiatives like the Sephora Accelerate program are really exciting. So congratulations to Fumi Monet, who is launching her own brand Influxious next year. So I'm really excited to see what she comes out with, and she's part of the Sephora Accelerate program. And that's kind of also an interesting part of decision making when you want to be sustainable or to really do value driven investment in things that you add to your life or you buy, because of course this initiative is fantastic. And then also, for instance, like L'Oreal funds a lot of women in science and a lot of research, but then on some aspects they also are part of some not so desirable things. Like, I mean, a lot of their brands historically have participated in animal testing, for instance, for different markets. So I mean, in the EU it's banned, but it's everything's kind of messy. So we live in a world of grey, but it's also not necessarily to participate in everything. So, you can opt out of things. And I mentioned that because Sephora is also an LVMH owned brand, and that's also its own kettle of fish. But going back to creative directing and creator-led creative direction, especially the creators who I believe have a well-formed sense of taste, can do exciting things. Because today I got in all the way from America, the House of Brandt's latest launch, which is London Fog. I have been really intrigued by this house since they launched. This is all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm going to tag her in this video, Elizabeth Grace. This is her husband's company, and she was the creative director of this fragrance, and she so kindly sent this to me and sent this my way. And I'm sure she went through a lot of trouble, because shipping to Europe or shipping any kind of perfume around the world is not an easy feat. So I'm really, really grateful to everybody who does it. But she has an immaculate sense of self, from what I can tell, because when you look at the fragrances that she frequently features among her favorites, it's really clear that she knows what she likes, she has a sense of taste, and she knows what fits within that and that doesn't fit within that. And so her branding is very consistent. So anything creatively directed by her, I found, or I think, would be really good, essentially. So this is London Fog, and it's supposed to emulate the drink. Now, I need people, at least from the Europe end of things, to confirm that London Fog isn't like a real thing in the rest of the world, right? Because as a person who comes from a tea drinking nation, we drink just an Earl Grey with milk. And a London Fog, I think, has some lavender and vanilla, and kind of a latte steam sort of situation going on. So I think it might be an American thing. But anyway, it smells fantastic. It's a bergamot that's kind of got a brown sugar caramelized aspect. It's got some aromatic nuances going on in the background, a little dash of lavender. And then it also has a nice dose of sandalwood, which I think is supposed to be the milky aspect of the London fog. I do wish that the sandalwood in here was a bit more creamy, like an Australian sandalwood. But overall, the effect is fantastic because, in a way, because it's not so creamy, it also enhances the black tea note in here, which is fantastic. So yeah, I really love London fog. I'm really excited to wear that some more. And that's been awesome. Speaking of new brands competing in a new market, I'm going to make a post about this soon on my Instagram at least. I got in this fragrance from a new house called NDN Fragrances. This is an extrait de parfum called Aile or Aile, A-I-L-E. And it's made by a perfumer who's an artisan perfumer in the south of France, but he's also a sculptor. So each fragrance comes in this beautiful kind of concrete casing, but the fragrance itself comes like this. This is the only one in the collection thus far. Remember when I talked about the Extremageddon? Yeah. I really wish that this fragrance had been an eau de toilette. Maybe because there's a lot of naturals, that's why he amped up the oil concentration. But this to me feels like too much going on at the same time. They did send me a press kit with the inspiration behind the fragrance and what he was going for. So it's supposed to be inspired by a character woman who was born between Réunion and Corsica. I don't know why. And so within this you have some fruity notes that are supposed to be like from the Réunion aspect, some marine aspects, and also this particular herb or shrub that only grows in Corsica, this helichrysum or something. They also have geranium in here. There's supposed to be some oud that I don't smell. But this is like a really stewed, overripe fruit fragrance with a lot of herbaceous botanicals that are neither camphorous or highly green, just more like a tincture. And then it's very, very strong. It's also quite honeyed. And I do not know who I would see wearing something like this. This conceptually is interesting because I think this Corsican note of helichrysum or something is something new and unseen and smelled before. I think that the concrete casing is a beautiful nuance and touch to add. But I think that the fragrance itself it could do with some editing. I mean, he did say that he wanted something really powerful and unctuous, I guess, and he definitely achieved that. But I don't know if the artistic aspect of the creation process matches into something that is viable as something that many people would enjoy. But he clearly has connections because I think they're in boutiques in a lot of European countries. So, I mean, I wish them the best of luck, but I don't really enjoy the fragrance at all. But I'm really, really happy to have the casing because it's really cute and I use it as decor in my apartment. And I love that double nuance of use case for objects. And then I also got in a new Atelier Versace. I don't think if you had told me at the beginning of the year that I'd be receiving PR from Atelier Versace, I would have believed you. But hey ho, they have 5 new fragrances that they've launched, and this one is their Dream of Myrrh or Rêve de Myrrhe, and I really like it. When I first smelled it, I thought it was too much pink pepper and akigala wood, but once it's settled, it has really bloomed into something I really love. I think about my Omani frankincense, like the actual frankincense that I have, and there are so many aspects of that are mirrored in this fragrance. Myrrh and frankincense are not the same, but they are both essentially resins that come from plants. And what I really like about this is the same aspect in frankincense is that there's this musky quality and musty quality that these resins have, but there's also something really bright, and they've achieved that with pink pepper in here. And at first I thought that he also added some, this is a Gael Montero fragrance, by the way. He did the ingredients fragrance for Maison Révélée. So that they use a little bit of a pomerose, which gives you a little bit of a more fruity aspect with mandarin. So it has a brightness to it, which I thought was more youthful, but overall, this actually is quite a beautiful gem. They also had a new amber fragrance, which sounded delicious, but it felt like more close to things that already exist, and I didn't want kind of duplicates in my collection. So I really appreciate that. And Atelier Versace, I think, is making what luxury fragrance will be successful for as the fragrance world evolves throughout the years, which is what people want when they see something luxury or expect from luxury, which is something that is different but also highly wearable. And I think that really requires a good balance in incorporating naturals and synthetics into something that makes sense but also feels special for the customer. And of course that also goes into the bottle and the unboxing experience, which is also great. With Atelier Versace, they've got this beautiful mirror and it's presented in this hinge box, which you can see. I did an unboxing of Santal Boisé somewhere, so you can find that there. So yeah, Versace has really been doing it for me. Other PR that I got in and I've really loved, which is more recently unboxed, which is Lovers Rock by Tanaïs. They knocked it out the park with this one. They asked me what scent profiles I like, and I said, I like woodsy, spicy, and this is a gorgeous spiced tobacco fragrance. It just embodies everything I like. I like deep and spicy. I also like sweet, and this also is sweet enough for me. And this is part of their new packaging, which is really this beautifully ethereal bottle. And if you are listening on Spotify, you will see this on my profile somewhere soon. And so I really loved Lovers Rock. And they also sent me Ancients, which is more of like a wet earth, herbaceous shrubs. Again, no campherousness, no super galbany greenness there. And I think I like one of those two nuances in my green scents. So that one is like something not necessarily that I would wear, but it's technically really impressive. So photorealistic, that wet earth smell, like it transports me to hiking on the mountains of Cape Town after a rainy day. I feel like I can hear my neighbor, but I'm sure that's nothing. Also, what I've been excited about wearing is scents that I say are summertime scents in this cooler weather. And it's making me eat crow because these are performing really fantastically. So Frassaï sent me a travel size of their Dormir al Sol a while ago, and I really loved it in the summertime. I said it's sunshine in a bottle. I maintain that. And when you need sunshine in a bottle, in the cold, on the grey days, this is so lovely. It's a beautiful mimosa that is not leaning into the powdery aspects of mimosa, but it's more honeyed, and I think it's more romantic. It really feels like laying down on a bed of grass, late afternoon sun, having a nap under a mimosa bush or tree. I really don't know how they grow. And I love that. Ormond Jane also sent me loads of stuff. I got a full bottle of Byzance, which is not my favorite, but it's a good scent. And it's because on my skin, I get a lot of blackcurrant. And apparently this doesn't happen for everybody. And it's more of the cashmere orris profiles that people smell. And so, unfortunately for me, that's not so great, but I do have a travel size of Cashmere, which is one of their latest launches. And this I love. It's sweet and a little floral, so it's a little bit romantic, but it's mainly really woody and vibrationally emerald, so it's quite camphorous with the spices. There's a big dose of cardamom. Yes, it feels fun. It probably would layer really well with tuberose Astral. I should test that out. So I really love Cashmere. I also have tried their tasting menu. A lot of fantastic things in there. But it's also their more fruity, floral, atmospheric line. And I think I'm less of a fruity, floral, atmospheric person. So I was actually really excited to find some things in there that I liked. But I also posted that elsewhere. Being writing at home, I'm more happy to wear the fragrances that are not so typical. So I've been wearing a lot of Beaute du Diable by Imaginaires. I really love this carnation, geranium, rose that is also aromatic. Are we sensing a theme here? And I think I've also been enjoying its luxury line counterpart, which is I Flamed a Rose by Maison Lancome in the Les Absolus collection. I'm seeing this collection everywhere, and I'm seeing people enjoy smelling everything, and so I think it's been quite a successful line. And because I said, it was really brave coming up with an entire line of fragrances dedicated to the rose, but I think it's a hit, or at least if I go by the testers that I see in stores. I mean, Switzerland, I've seen it in Douglas, I've seen it in, no, not Douglas, I've seen it in Manor, I've seen it in Globus, and I've seen it in, what's that other place that I went to? Fauen, which is another department store. So if you are in Germanic speaking Switzerland, those are places you can find it. And I've also put a little bit of a dent in it already. What's different with this one is it's more rose instead of carnation and geranium, but they put a big dose of vetiver, and it's a little bit smoked, and there's also sandalwood in there. So you get almost a similar concrete-like effect. And what I love about both of them is that they're not sweet at all. They're more about the rose. In fact, the rose becomes less of a rose because it's more of an aromatic, because of the lack of that sweetness that you'll find in like a Turkish rose and in the rose centifolia itself, which can be quite fruity. I've also been enjoying my Racyne fragrances. Again, summer scents in winter. Verdeur, unfortunately, is fantastic in the cold, and in the summertime, I said that this is the perfect cologne for me because it's more like a vetiver, bright citrus fragrance. But in this colder weather, the orris and angelica really play well together, and so it's become a bit more earthy and grounding and really, really cozy. This one is a little bit more sweet because of the citruses in there, but again, it's not super unctuous and gourmand. Not that I haven't been wearing my gourmands. My bottle of Yum Bougie Marshmallow is a third of the way empty, so I've been wearing my gourmands as well. But I also enjoyed La Terre, La Nuit, which I had put away for a while because we had an electrical inspection in the building, and so the electrician would come into our apartments, and I just looked at my shelf of fragrances everywhere and I got really embarrassed, so I put everything away. But in a way, it's really been useful to be selective of what I put out onto my fragrance tray and then reevaluate every couple of weeks. So La Terre La Nuit was kind of hidden away, and I've retrieved it. It's really interesting. There really wasn't much of a coffee nuance when I first sampled it, but it's much more there now, and I really love it. It's so different. You really have to just smell this one, La Terre La Nuit. I don't know what to tell you. I don't think I could adequately describe it apart from saying it's the earth swallowing you whole and a little bit of coffee. It's fantastic. I love it so much. And what else can we discuss? Yes. This is one of my favorite purchases of the year, one of my favorite finds, and it's even better because it's here for a good time, not a long time, but because of science, it can last a long time. This is Camilla Aubrey's 1928. She's just done a rebrand of her brand, so you will not find flacons like this anymore. So this one does not have a sprayer at all. You just dab it onto your skin. She said that this was like an ode to dandelion wine. I've described this in a different episode, but this is so stunning. It feels like late summer. It's a little bit boozy, slightly floral, quite honeyed and sweet, a little bit oaky. It's stunning. It's like one of those gems of botanical fragrances, because botanical fragrances or natural fragrances are typically not long lasting. But yesterday I looked at my Future Society Optimal Habitat, which is almost finished, and I said, let's put this to a real test. And so I used this with my Camilla Aubrey, which normally lasts maybe 2 hours if I'm lucky. And this lasted all day. Obviously, it wasn't projecting like a brand new fragrance, but when I put my nose to my skin, I could smell it, and that's really all I want, because writing from home, I don't have to care about what anybody else thinks I smell like. I can just enjoy my fragrances. And so yeah, that's really one of my favorite finds of the year. Of course, there are other favorites that we all can name at the count of 3, but that one was really, really special. And it's also something not many people would have, which, you know, really satisfies my little individuality complex that rises sometimes. And so yeah, those have been parts of what I've been wearing, what has come in. Oh, I can also talk about this very briefly. This is the replica Soul of the Forest. It's in its box because I'm going to have to find a new home for this, because I will not wear it. But it's good. It's technically sound perfumery. It does exactly what it says on the box. It's very sappy. It's quite woody. The woods are dry. You also get something rooty with it, so there's a slight earthiness, and it does feel like you are in a forest. But there's also a lot of those pine leaves involved, so this one does have something interesting in the greenness that's less just shrubbery, but it's so photorealistic, so piney, so sappy, that I don't think it's great on skin, or at least it's not great on my skin. And it would be great as more of a functional fragrance, so as a reed diffuser or I don't want to say a car scent, but something that's more for the atmosphere rather than for the body or the self, because it's really good, but it's not what I need, not what I want. And yeah, oh yeah, that was sent to me because I was tapped for a campaign, but they wanted me to post on both of my platforms, but that's very different pricing, and they wouldn't meet my rate, so I had to just move on. And that's okay. You know, you win some, you lose some, but you really have to stand on business because you accept the payment you think you deserve. But now we can go into the brand of the day, the headliner for the Sniff Session, which is none other than our good friends at Electimuss. Now, this brand, I think, has mixed reception. Some people would probably love the fragrances, however, they don't necessarily like the bottles, which is okay. But they have a really big collection and they are producing a lot. But I think that despite that, their ideal customer still remains the same person for me. There are some outliers, but overall I think that you must like strong fragrances, you must like interesting storytelling. If you're somebody who's more into more softer, gentle, naturalistic fragrances like fresh florals, this is probably not for you, but I think they've got interesting stuff. And of course, they created one of my favorite fragrances of the year. So let's start off with Vixia. And they do have multiple collections within their collections. So this is part of the line that I would say is probably more suited to people who appreciate a more vintage fragrance. This is very heliotrope heavy, powdery, floral, old world feminine. Actually really fantastic on the blotter. Oh, I'm re-evaluating my initial evaluation of Ixia, because to me it was a little bit too medicinal on the heliotrope, so I couldn't appreciate it as much, but now the florals are popping out some more. Do I need to put this on my skin? Do I want to? Let's do it. Why not? Life is short. Okay. I did not originally like this. I thought it was too strong, too powdery, too vintage. But now, ooh, there's also something almost fruity coming out. The vanilla is really jumping out as well. Because they also include Vixia in their gourmand collection, and I always wondered why. To me, it's more of a powdery vintage scent, but with the vanilla standing out and mixing with the heliotrope, it's more modern. I think they sent a bottle of this to Erin Parsons, and it makes sense because it feels very much her aesthetic, and it feels more old world than new. Yeah, but Vixia is fantastic. If you have been enjoying fragrances like Jouissance, Les Cahiers Secrets, if you enjoy the Bien Aimé fragrances, if you enjoy, what am I trying to get at? Yes, the new Arquise de Venice Rococo, check out Vixia. Now we do Vichy Leather. Vichy Leather, I don't know. This brand is British, by the way. Oh yeah, this is cool. So Vichy Leather has a lot of smokiness to it. But I don't know which particular the ingredient they use to make smoky fragrances, but it does have a little bit of a barbecue nuance, like a meaty, smoked meat nuance. But the leather is still there. It's not super deep and tannic. It's more on the middle ground between suede and leather. If you understand the depths the leather notes can have, it's more in the middle. It's okay. It's not my favorite. I don't think I'd recommend that to people, but it's not bad. Now we are doing Semanis. Oh, the storytelling for this one, was speaking of branding, is odes to the Roman Empire. So a lot of their naming will be somehow related to that. This is where we get into the Electimuss kind of profile, I say. They use a lot of raspberry, and I think I detected in here. This one also feels like a raspberry version of something like a Creed Aventus. It does have a more masculine edge to it, in my opinion. And then it also has a leather in there. So this one is lighter. Yeah, it's great. This is a solid selection for somebody. I think for people, especially like for men who are leaning into luxury fragrance, they haven't quite let go of their Bleu de Chanel and their Creed Aventus. I think Semanis would be a good option for them. Now we do Trojan. I actually have a bottle of this. And the first time I smelled it, I thought, okay, this is a Baccarat clone. But now I say that a lot of brands fall into the curse of ethyl maltol, because that's what Baccarat Rouge really is. It's an overdose of that. Yes, there are other notes in there, but it's an overdose of ethyl maltol. So anybody who will use a lot of ethyl maltol in a formula are going to be compared to Baccarat. But Trojan has a lot of aromatics in here that makes it a different fragrance, in my opinion. Because I definitely detect the leather in here. Not the leather, the lavender in here. But at the same time, it is an overdose of ethyl maltol. So as luxury fragrances go, I wouldn't, now that I've smelled more of the collection, steer you towards this fragrance from this house. I mean, there are other more affordable fragrances out there that you could lean on, especially because Electimuss has far more interesting fragrances. Now we have Sylvanas. And all of them have some kind of storytelling behind them, but you have to look on the website for that. This is very silver. This feels cold and metallic. There's also light and crisp. There also feels like there are like a saffron leather notes and nuances in here. There's something fruity. It kind of feels like a crisp apple in a way. This is also bright and fresh, and I think along with Sumanis, another scent I would give to a guy about to graduate from Bleu de Chanel. Yeah, this is great. I think, yeah, Electimuss has great scents for the gents, but if you are a gent, but I mean, you know, a gent is a construct, but I mean, people still live their lives a certain way. But if you are a gent, would you agree, if you've smelled the Electimuss collection, that Sylvanas and Sumanis are more on that edge of things? Then we have Rodant. I'm smelling rose. I'm smelling saffron. Yeah. Maybe some patchouli as well. Oud. But not real oud. It's great. But it's a rose oud. It's a light rose oud or light rose saffron patchouli. I've smelled this before. I would still wear I Flamed a Rose over this. But this is fantastic. I think I'm going to wear this sample more. I mean, it's something that is not groundbreaking, but it's just well executed. I mean, they work with the best perfumers in the world, so that's never going to be a question about, you know, quality and execution. But it's just sometimes some concepts are better than others in terms of the market space itself. Ooh, what's this? Puritas. Oh yeah, this is fantastic. Aromatic incense. Something a little bit cold in there. Something very camphorous. I'm sure there's cardamom in here. And they've just redone these bottles to look like the bottles for Aquila Absolute. Oh yeah, I think maybe I need to put Puritas on skin. Oh, Vixia still smells fantastic on me. Oh no. I did not need to fall in love with more Electimuss fragrances. But I will say, with this house, you have to wear them throughout the year, constantly, to really see what you love and what you don't love. Because for the longest time I was obsessed with Capua, but then something happened to me. I couldn't do it anymore. There was something in there that became too synthetic for me. This is Persephone's patchouli. It's fantastic. It's a patchouli with honey and florals, and it's such a lovely take on the note. It's also a little bit camphorous and spiced. It's romantic, it's bright, it's light. It's a fantastic, one of the best patchoulis on the market, honestly. If you like a bright patchouli and something innovative. This is what I really loved about this. It was an innovative patchouli. I still have a travel size. I really love reaching for it now and then. It's not something that would be a daily driver, but it's beautiful. You got to appreciate the art for what it is. And now we go into Patchouli of the Underworld. The way that I'm burning through this discovery set makes me think about how funny it is when I go shopping with people and they're like, do you want to take a break? We should take a break. Or a shop person will say, do you want to take a break? And I'm like, do you know who I am? I can go through a discovery set, okay? I'm hungry to know the collection. Now I'm smelling Patchouli of the Underworld. I haven't smelled this in a long time. And this is also fantastic. It's deeper, more leathery. I would say the patchouli in here is more syrupy in a way, whereas Persephone's patchouli is more chalky. This is also a bit more chocolatey. It's deep. It's also really clean. There was a time where I thought that this was really intense, but it's actually just lovely. Yes, Patchouli of the Underworld. Fantastic duo, those two. And this is also why I say there are certain discovery sets that are fantastic gifts, and I would say that Electimuss is one of them. It comes with blotters, like Frassaï, it comes with a lot of different fragrance options. And if you think about all of the 2 ml samples you get in here, it's really great value for money. And also, of course, you get a voucher off of the price of a full bottle. This is Mercurial Cashmere. This is probably going to be one of the most popular fragrances out of this line. It's also one of the least interesting. Listen, it's a technical, great fragrance. It's a beautiful floral amber. It's caramelized, white floral. But this is what I would say would be the elevation for somebody who's moving outside of like YSL Black Opium, or something that is like a white floral with a little bit of a gourmand nuance. It's great, it's well executed, it's luxurious smelling, not as interesting as the other things in the line. Now let's go for Imperium. I think this is one of their best sellers as well. They have the hair fragrance of this. Mercurial Cashmere, the hair perfume, that's fantastic in the winter time, not gonna lie. Because you want something that's just pleasant, but is also great and nourishing, and their hair fragrances are definitely that. I need to pick up another one. Imperium, fruity rose, light, bright, fresh. Yeah, I see why people like this. This is like a more gender neutral approach to scents like Sylvanas and Sumanis, I think. Like, I think a lot of women would enjoy this. This is probably why it's also a hair fragrance. And it's unique and it's special. Yeah, I see why people like Imperium. Although the historical love of conquering an empire is something really questionable. Sometimes I look for documentaries to fall asleep to, and I was listening to one about the Roman Empire, and when I heard about how Rome was founded, it kind of makes sense why the world is the way it is. What we applaud, what we celebrate, look, the Roman Empire achieved a lot, but it was literally a band of thieves and assaulters who built up a society by taking what they wanted. Which probably makes sense as to why capitalism is the way it is. But yeah, it was quite harrowing to learn that. The epitome of historical society was just a band of crooks and morally questionable people. Anyway, this is Gladiator Oud. And it's fantastic. It's rich, resinous, syrupy, deep oud, not animalic, more just like a ambery oud. It's got some vetiver in there, I think. Yes. A little bit nutty. Fantastic. This is also probably something that projects like heck. This is a I'm here, I'm announcing myself kind of fragrance. I also think there's something in here that reminds me of scents like Fortis and Entrance by Andrea Marc and Otto Parisi Bocanera kind of scents. Yeah, I can see why people love that. It's a lot. It's not a Val fragrance, but I can see why people love that fragrance a lot. And next we have, it's so funny, my specs are right there, but I always film without my glasses on because of the glare. But I don't put in my contact lenses, which I do have. So I don't know what we have until I bring it right to my face, if you can't tell if you're watching this. And this is Cupid's Kiss. Oh yeah, I think this is fantastic for the brand because it's really expanding their repertoire. It really does exist in the same universe as Vixia. And this is something, again, that feels more vintage and more old world perfumery inspired. It was so exciting. I got to meet Julien Racyne, who's the nose behind this, and also a lot of my other favorites like Pavilion by Andrea Marc, Aquila Absolute from this brand. He's so nice. He's so tall. Yeah, this is really orris and leather. Slight sweetness in there. It's got this density that to me makes it old world. Like I feel like this is something that would have been a fur coat fragrance or a glove fragrance that really meshes well with something more animalic. It's fun. It's not something that people would think. A lot of modern fragrance tastes wouldn't necessarily run towards this, but there is a customer for this. Yeah, it's actually really lovely. I think it's underrated. But again, this is not something I would wear every day. I'm really happy with the travel size I have and the sample I have. But it's really well executed. And now we have Celestial. Oh, this is one of those more saffron ones. I have smelled through this before, but now we're doing it together. Yes, this is bright, fresh, Celestial. This one to me is like a version of Aquila Absolute with like less sweetness. Yeah, slightly metallic. It's got that saffron in there. It's lovely. Actually, yeah, it's also got a little bit of a fuzziness or almost a muskiness that Aquila Absolute doesn't have. So if you want something that's not as strong and sweet as Aquila Absolute, I think Celestial would be a good compromise. And now we've got Capua, old friend, old foe. How do I feel about it today? Yeah, still the same. It's lovely. It's a vetiver for a deep, rich cedar kind of fragrance. And the vetiver is quite nutty, but some things happen to my preferences where I detect something that's more sweet and synthetic in the vetiver nuance. That the same thing happened to me with some other fragrances. It was the Portofino scent from Victoria Beckham, which is too much for me now. But it's still excellent. But yeah, I think Purita still smells lovely. Again, it's not a scent I would wear every single day, but it's fantastic. And I'm going to be wearing my Vixia sample more because it's actually great as well. My skin has changed. Now we smell black caviar. I love black caviar. It's a fun aquatic fragrance. So it's got sweetness to it. It's also got a little bit of an oceanic edge. There's also something camphorous and quite herbal or spiced. Yeah, it's a really great take on a more oceanic fragrance because it has brightness lifting it up. I get the oceanic nuances, but it's not like a completely in your face, blow your brains out cologne fragrance. We need to stop. Let's just drop that material in general. Let's relax with the marine notes in general. I'm joking. We can't adjust the entire fragrance landscape to my taste. But I think black caviar is a fantastic take on an oceanic fragrance, and more people should talk about that. Now we're smelling austere or oyster. This is a more saturated, fruity fragrance. It's got some sharp, woody aspects to it. This feels very much Electimuss DNA. Yeah, it's good. Is it blowing my hair back? No, but it's good. It's different. I like that. It's different, but it's also very Electimuss, which I like. I like that they have a good, strong scent identity. And now we do Aquila Absolute. This is one of my favorites. I'm thinking about what scent to wear for my PhD defense, and I'm stuck between going something bold like Aquila Absolute or something more soft like Spice d'Arnaud. So, it's both Electimuss scents. Maybe another brand will come through with a scent that I think would be a better choice, but these are my current contenders. Saffron, raspberry, leather. So the thing about stellar nomenclature and raspberry, you'll find this theme a lot in perfumery. It's because raspberry ketones have been detected at the center of the galaxy. So obviously people now associate raspberry ketones with the smell of space. I love this. It's so bold, so strong, beautifully unisex. I think Aquila Absolute should have had a viral moment. I don't know why it hasn't. It should have had a viral moment. Maybe it just needs to get into the right hands, more influential people than me, but I think it should have had a viral moment. This is now Aurora. This is much more clean. It's leathery, fresh. There's also something a bit more oceanic and watery about this one. I love. J'adore. And finally, this is not even everything in their scent lineup. Amber Aquilaria. Yeah. This one's fun because it's got a little bit of a pissiness to it. And it's got, so there must be maybe some jasmine in there, I think. It's also really resinous and sticky and gooey. There's something cola-like in that opening. But this is very much an amber scent. It's the oud. Aquilaria tree. It's the oud. Yeah, this is fantastic. I love the House of Electimuss. I think that they're always coming out with interesting perfumery. You're not going to love all of it. I don't love all of it. But it's at least interesting. And I think that they're a great contender on the market. They're staying relevant, obviously, with 3 releases a year. Maybe a bit too much, but now it's the average. They're staying relevant, but they're staying unique. There have been some aspects of following trends, like Caspian Cherry was a cherry fragrance and cherry was a trend. Spice d'Arnaud, very much vanilla. Vanilla is always on trend. But I think that they have a solid brand vision. It's all centered in the Roman Empire, but I think that the scents themselves also have a good creative direction in terms of having something that feels part of the line and not necessarily something that's just made for the sake of making it. So yeah, these are fantastic. They're great. I think that the line could use some more floral leaning fragrances, I guess. Yeah, I think I'm missing florals in this. There's a lot of rose used. There's a lot of saffron, a lot of raspberry, but we could use some more florals in here. I also like that they use unusual fruits like apple in some cases. Oh yes, I was supposed to give you my favorites. Something that's not in the collection, obviously, is spice in this discovery set, Spice d'Arnaud. Love that. That's my favorite Electimuss fragrance. There's also Caspian Cherry, which is newer, but it probably will be added at some point. And then there's also Vanilla Edija, which was in the another iteration. I have a sample of it somewhere. And so my ranking would be Spice d'Arnaud, favorite fragrance. Second place, Aquila Absolute. Third place, oh yeah, Vanilla Edija. Fourth place, we would give it to, oh no, Persephone's Patchouli. Why am I even trying to play around? And fifth place for my Electimuss favorites would have to be something that I would wear, something that I would enjoy frequently. Having gone through all of these, you know what, I'll give it to Celestial because it's close enough to Aquila Absolute, but it's slightly different. I'll give it to Celestial. Yes, if you love saffron, if you like an oud, if you like a strong fragrance, if you like more leathery saffron fragrances, Electimuss is the house to go to. I definitely think it could be more particular for a certain audience, but it's still fantastic perfumery. So thank you for joining me once again. I hope you heard something interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts or any thoughts you might have conjured while listening. And as always, sample before you buy, and happy sniffing.